Hello everyone, and welcome to my Soap Twist 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In the glittering but competitive world of Los Angeles fashion, where family ties unravel as easily as shoddy fabric, Forrester Creations represented the peak of elegance and intrigue. Hope Logan Spencer's recent remarriage to Liam Spencer caused tremors across the corporation and the linked lives of the Forresters, Logans, and Spencers. The wedding had been a magnificent occasion, with vows repeated in front of loved ones, but behind the champagne toasts and ecstatic embraces lay shadows from the past, waiting to overshadow the delicate bliss. Hope, resplendent in her job as the face of hope for the future, had poured herself into her work after the honeymoon period. She and Liam were establishing a solid life with their children and the promise of no more dramatic upheavals. However, stability in this world was an illusion, especially with the announcement that Thomas Forrester would return to the firm. Thomas, the brilliant but troubled designer whose relationship with Hope had been entwined by passion, obsession, and heartache, had been gone for months, nursing wounds from yet another rejection. His comeback was described as a triumphant return, with the opportunity to recover his position as the visionary behind the line's greatest triumphs. But murmurs spread through the immaculate hallways of Forrester Creations. Thomas had returned with a fury. His eyes, previously softened by therapy and distance, now had a deeper sparkle. The man who had worked so hard to suppress his compulsive tendencies was unraveling. Seeing Hope happily married to Liam, the man who had always stood between them, sparked something primitive inside Thomas. Late evenings in his workshop, sketches strewn about like shattered dreams, he whispered to himself about what could and should have happened. The mannequin in the corner, dressed in one of Hope's designs, appeared to mock him, its blank face mirroring the voice in his head whispering temptations from the past. Hope sensed the change as soon as Thomas arrived. The initial meeting in the design room was contentious. Steffi Forrester, ever the protective sister and co-CEO, had fought for Thomas's restoration as Hope for the future's principal designer. "He's the best we've got," Steffi said firmly, ignoring Hope's reluctant protestations. The lines soared under him before. "We can't let personal discomfort dictate business." Hope held her tongue, recalling the steamy times she and Thomas had experienced not so long ago, moments that had nearly destroyed her life. After marrying Liam, she desired distance and professionalism. But Steffi refused to compromise and Ridge, stuck in the middle, chose family loyalty. Deke Sharp, the young designer Hope had hired in Thomas's place, felt the axe fall first. His inventive ideas, coupled with a modern edge, had given new life to the range. However, with Thomas's return, there was no room for two main visionaries. Deke's anguish was evident as Steffi broke the news. Financial restrictions, artistic direction shift, polite corporate language for "you're out." Hope fought for him, pleading with Steffi and Ridge, but to no avail. Rumors circulated that Katie Logan, whose new business is financed by Bill Spencer, may acquire Deke for her rival fashion house, turning Forrester's loss into a competitive threat. As the days evolved into weeks, Thomas's behavior became more irregular. He pushed himself into his art with ferocity, creating designs that were bolder, edgier, and almost confrontational in their sensuality. Gowns that clung like second skin, necklines that dipped into forbidden territory, mirrors of his inward struggle. Hope confronted him one evening in the empty office, with the city lights glittering below like distant stars. "Thomas, this isn't you. You're pushing too hard. We can collaborate without whatever this is." His gaze lingered for too long, a flash of the old obsession returning. "You don't know what this is, Hope. Seeing you with him every day, pretending we're just colleagues, it's killing me." Liam saw a tempest rising. As protective as ever, he advised Hope to set strict boundaries. "Thomas has a history. Don't let him pull you back into that darkness." But Hope, ever the optimist, believed in redemption. She'd seen Thomas change before. Maybe he might again. However, as previews for the future collections increased, tensions rose. Thomas overheard Hope defending her marriage to Brooke one afternoon, rejecting any remaining love for him as ancient past. That night, alone in his flat, the relapse struck with intensity. Flashbacks to his mannequin fixation and the lengths he'd gone to possess Hope came flooding back. The voice reappeared, sneaky and persuasive. "She was meant for you. Liam stole her. Take her back." The pivotal moment came during a late-night fitting session. Hope stayed behind to examine samples, tired by juggling job and wedding pleasure. Thomas offered to help in a deceptively casual tone. He got too close while she was modeling a gown and adjusting the cloth. "You look incredible," he murmured, his hand resting on her shoulder for longer than necessary. Hope backed away, warning bells blaring. "Thomas, stop. I'm married. Happily." His expression clouded, a storm cloud rising. "Happily? With Waffle Boy? You deserve more. You deserve someone who sees you, truly sees you, like I do." The conversation broke out in laughter. Accusations flew, Hope accusing him of reverting to old habits, Thomas countering that she had led him on by agreeing to work together. In a moment of naked candor, he revealed the conflict raging within him. "I thought I was over it, Hope. Therapy, time away, but seeing you every day, it's like acid eating away at me." Tears welled up in his eyes, but there was something sinister beneath them. Hope, scared yet empathetic, attempted to de-escalate. "We need to get you help. This isn't healthy." But Thomas's mind splintered even further. That night, he was unable to sleep. Visions of Hope leaving and coming to Liam tormented him. By daybreak, a desperate, insane idea had emerged from the shadows of his mind. He couldn't lose her again. If he couldn't have her voluntarily, then no. He forced the thought aside, yet it remained like poison. The disappearance started subtly. Hope, upset from the office drama, decided to go on a solo retreat, a weekend cottage in the mountains, to clear her mind and sketch fresh ideas free of distractions. She told Liam and Brooke that she'd be back Sunday. "Just need some space to breathe," she responded with a smile. Liam kissed her goodbye, confident in her freedom. But Hope never came at the cabin. Her car was discovered abandoned on a remote road, phone dead, and no indications of struggle. Panic ensued. Liam was frantic, phoning the cops. Brooke was in tears, and Steffi was guilt-ridden, wondering if forcing Thomas back had caused this. Searches began, with helicopters buzzing over woodlands and news alerts displaying Hope's image across screens. Meanwhile, Thomas provided the perfect alibi, working late at the office, as evidenced by security cameras. However, in private, his expression was inscrutable. Did the dark relapse drive him over the edge? Whispers spread among the family about Thomas's history of fixation and his recent intensity. Ridge vigorously defended his son, but suspicion crept in. As the investigators probed deeper, clues emerged. A witness reported seeing a man who matched Thomas's description near Hope's route. Liam received texts from Hope's phone after she went missing, with hazy promises that she needed more time. However, forensics eventually revealed they were not from her. In the midst of his relapse, Thomas had planned it all. Not violence, he couldn't harm her, but solitude. A concealed location where Hope may glimpse the truth, free of Liam's influence. "We'll be together," he said quietly to himself as he drove through the night to the rural property he had surreptitiously acquired. Hope, trapped by confusion and his requests, awoke in a beautifully decorated room with designs pinned to the walls, his vision for their future. The fashion industry reeled. Forrester Creations is on hold, and rivalries are forgotten in the face of tragedy. Liam resolved to find her, enlisting Finn and some surprising allies. Steffi faced Thomas, noticing the lunacy in his eyes. "What have you done?" she demanded. Thomas responded with frightening calm. "What I had to. For us." As the search escalated, Hope's strange disappearance revealed the fragility of redemption. Thomas's dark side, once hidden, has emerged with terrible power. Would love twisted into possession ruin them all, or might the light of truth shine through the shadows before it was too late? Brooke's passionate maternal wrath, Ridge's torn loyalties, and Liam's unshakable drive all played a role in the unending drama. Secrets were spilled, Thomas's treatment records were leaked, showing buried obsessions sparked by Hope's presence. Deke, who is already in Katie's new residence, provided insight on Thomas's recent aggressive behavior at work. Weeks blurred into a nightmare. Hope, in captivity, alternated between terror and attempts to contact the guy she had thought had changed.
This isn't you, Thomas.
Let me go. We can get help. But his delusions worsened. He saw a family with Douglas, a life without Liam. A breakthrough occurred when Douglas, a visiting boarding school student, casually mentioned a secret house that Daddy had described in nightmares. Alarms went off, and GPS traces from Thomas's automobile led officials to the hideaway. The confrontation was epic. Liam bursts in first, fists flying, police swarm. When Thomas was cornered, he burst into tears, confessing to a failed love. I just wanted her to choose me. Hope emerged, startled but undamaged physically, though the emotional wounds were profound. Thomas has been detained and is facing kidnapping allegations. His job and freedom are hanging by a thread. Forrester Creations suffered as a result of the incident. Hope for the future revived under a new direction, possibly with Deke returning triumphantly. Hope and Liam's marriage was challenged but strengthened, and they vowed no more toxicity. However, in soap operas, darkness remains. From behind bars, Thomas plotted redemption or revenge. The cycle threatened to spin anew. Family gatherings became unpleasant, with accusations flying. Brooke resented Ridge for enabling Thomas, while Steffi struggled with guilt. Eric, the patriarch, imparted insight in the midst of his own problems. Hope's disappearance had destroyed the illusion of serenity, exposing that in the world of high fashion and higher emotions, relapse was always just one tragedy away. As the seasons changed, so did alliances. Katie's fashion house flourished, poaching talent. Bill smirked at the devastation he had unwittingly caused. But, at its core, Thomas's dark relapse acted as a warning tale. Unbridled obsession had the potential to destroy hope itself, leaving only shadows behind. The drama continued, with never-ending twists, because in Los Angeles, beauty was bold, but darkness was even bolder. The weight of quiet pressed down heavily on the Forrester offices as rumors spread about Hope Logan's unexpected disappearance. One day, she was there, firm and determined, attempting to keep together the delicate bits of her life. The next moment, she was gone, leaving behind unanswered questions, half-finished talks, and a growing suspicion that something considerably more sinister was going on beneath the surface. No one felt the impact of her absence more than Thomas Forrester, whose carefully crafted stability began to crumble the moment Hope left from his orbit. For months, Thomas had been torn between redemption and relapse. He had worked tirelessly to persuade his family, co-workers, and, most significantly, himself that he was no longer the man who allowed obsession and manipulation to guide his actions. Therapy sessions, open discussions, and a fresh emphasis on his profession had given him a feeling of purpose. In many ways, Hope served as a quiet anchor throughout the process. Her idea that people could change, that even the darkest urges could be challenged and overcome, gave Thomas motivation to keep fighting his inner demons. When Hope vanished without explanation, that anchor was abruptly taken away. At first, Thomas attempted to remain cool. He reminded himself that Hope was an adult with her own life and motives. Perhaps she needs some space. Perhaps she had gone somewhere to clear her mind. But as the hours passed into days, the absence became more audible than any assurances he could offer himself. The calls went unanswered. Messages remained unread. The familiar serenity he had developed began to dissolve, thread by thread. Brooke Logan was the first to express what others were thinking but were frightened to say aloud. Hope didn't simply leave. She disappeared. There was no note, warning, or explanation given to her family and friends. Brooke's maternal instincts kicked in, and her terror grew with each passing moment. She approached Ridge, demanding answers he didn't have and keeping a careful eye on Thomas, whose past made him an obvious suspect in her opinion. Even though Thomas insisted he knew nothing, the tension between them resurfaced. laced with old wounds and unresolved distrust. Ridge was caught between defending his son and recognizing the troubling tendencies of the past. He wanted to think Thomas was saying the truth, that he had actually changed. However, Hope's disappearance reminded Ridge of things he thought he could forget. Thomas noticed the skepticism, which was slight but persistent. He noticed a difference in how people looked at him and how discussion ceased when he entered a room. That unspoken judgment gnawed at him, fueling the darker ideas he had worked so hard to suppress. As the days passed with little hint of hope, Thomas's internal conflict worsened. Sleep became elusive. Nightmares reappeared, blurring the line between recollection and imagination. In those restless hours, Thomas replayed every conversation he'd had with Hope, looking for hints he might have overlooked. Did she appear afraid? Distant? Is there anything she wanted to tell him but didn't? The inquiries continued, each one pushing him deeper into self-doubt and paranoia. At work, Thomas attempted to maintain a professional facade, but cracks appeared. His designs grew irregular, indicating a confused state of mind. Colleagues muttered about his behavior, mentioning his quick temper and inattentive demeanor. Steffi also observed. His sister had always been able to read him better than anyone else. She recognized the indications she feared the most, the clenched jaw, the distant expression, and the way his thoughts appeared to stray to a place he couldn't go. Steffi confronted Thomas, asking him to discuss and open himself before things got out of hand. He tried to comfort her, saying he was all right and just needed time. But even as he spoke, he knew the words were hollow. The truth was that Hope's disappearance had reopened wounds that he thought were healed. Without her constant influence, the voice in his thoughts became louder and more relentless, whispering doubts and excuses he had vowed never to hear again. Meanwhile, Brooke decided to take matters into her own hands. She began retracing Hope's tracks, contacting everybody who could have seen or heard from her. Liam was frantic, overcome with remorse and anxiety. Their tangled history weighed heavily on him, and he couldn't shake the notion that Hope had departed because of unresolved emotional conflict between them. The thought that Hope is fleeing from heartbreak rather than danger provided little consolation. If anything, it made the situation seem more vulnerable. As the hunt progressed, rumors spread like wildfire. Some assumed that Hope chose to leave town to avoid the stresses of her personal and professional life. Others feared much worse. Throughout it all, Thomas's every move and word was examined. The pressure was relentless. He felt confined, isolated by mistrust, and troubled by the possibility that, deep down, he was still the man everyone suspected he was. The pivotal moment occurred when Thomas came across something that sent shivers down his spine. While going through past text on his phone, he spotted a missed call from Hope the night before she disappeared. It just lasted a few seconds, but it was there. He had missed it in the craziness of that day, and it now loomed huge in his memory. Why did she call him? What had she intended to say? The unanswered call became an obsession, representing all he had lost control of. Instead of revealing his discoveries, Thomas kept it to himself. The secrecy was slight at first, but it represented a hazardous shift. He convinced himself that he needed time to contemplate and digest what it meant. However, the decision to withhold knowledge fueled the darker side of his personality, which lived on power and manipulation. Even though he saw the warning signs, he felt powerless to prevent them. Hope's absence began to have unexpected consequences for those closest to her. Douglas, torn between confusion and panic, realized something was seriously wrong. He asked questions that no one could answer, his innocence in stark contrast to the complex emotions whirling around him. Thomas, desperate to protect his son from agony, found it difficult to remain calm. The endeavor exhausted him, leaving him emotionally raw and potentially vulnerable. Late one night, alone in his apartment, Thomas finally allowed himself to face the truth he had been avoiding. Without Hope, he felt unmoored. She had represented the possibility of redemption, the belief that he could rise beyond his darkest faults. Her disappearance felt like a verdict, a brutal reminder that even hope might go unexpectedly. In that vulnerable state, The distinction between fear and obsession blurred, and old urges resurfaced. The relapse was neither immediate nor spectacular. It crept in quietly, disguised as care, resolve, and something even more frightening. Thomas began to rationalize his thoughts, convincing himself that if he could just find hope, everything would become clear again. The concept engulfed him, transcending rationality and reasoning. He convinced himself that only he understood her and could actually heal her. As his behavior got more irregular, Steffi and Ridge became increasingly concerned. They pushed him to return to therapy and to rely on the support system he had established. Thomas refused, maintaining he was in charge. The irony was awful. The harder he attempted to demonstrate his stability, the more obvious his unraveling became. His dark relapse was no longer a distant menace, it was occurring in real time. Hope's strange departure served as the impetus for everything that followed. Whether she had departed on purpose or was obliged to remain silent, her absence revealed the delicate balance that held Thomas together. Each unresolved question pushed him closer to the edge, where past and present intersected in hazardous ways. The guy who had battled so hard for change was now at a crossroads, his future uncertain and his demons closer than ever. As the days passed, the sense of foreboding got greater. Hope Logan was missing, and so was the light that had kept Thomas Forrester grounded. In its place, shadows gathered, foreshadowing future calamities. The mystery of Hope's disappearance loomed huge, but just as frightening was Thomas's metamorphosis, a dark relapse that threatened to ruin everything he had worked for.